June 2025. And just a quick update from here in Israel to let you know what's going on with what I know, at least with what I can tell you that I know about the war between Iran and Israel and the United States. The long and short of it, if you don't want to stick around for the details, is that just like the title says, it's over. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, yes, there's technically a ceasefire at the moment. It's been holding up since whenever it was, Wednesday, something like Tuesday. So Tuesday, even though the Iranian dictatorship did in fact violate the ceasefire, and then did so again hours later. Well, once they violated it the first time, it was over, but they technically, Israelis did not respond, and then the Iranians shot more missiles 3 hours, almost 4 hours later. And then Israel responded. And then Trump got mad at Iran and more so at Israel for responding, which is, sorry, but crazy. They violated it twice. But he expected them to do nothing. And then by the next day, he'd already said that things were fine and he understood why they did it and all that. And he knows that Iran is the side that violated it first. And, he was all, buddy with Bibi in his tweets saying the government of Israel should stop prosecuting Bibi and all that stuff. Anyway, and then yesterday, Friday, I think it was, he said that Trump said that if there needed to be, if the Iranians basically took an aggressive posture again vis-a-vis their nuclear ambitions, that he would have no problem considering bombing them again if that was the solution. In other words, it's not over, because at the same time, the foreign minister of Iran tweeted or posted or whatever, bleated out that Iran was not going to meet with the United States this coming week, despite Trump saying that they would, and that if he wanted for Iran to meet with the United States, then Trump should lower his temperature and his language, saying things that offend the Iranian Ayatollah supreme leader guy, because apparently that guy's a bit of a snowflake, despite talking tough and talking all genocidal when it comes to America and Israel and the UK and the infidels and hypocrites. Apparently he can't take a few scathing words from the president, who's known for his brash language. It's almost funny, except it's not funny, because the supreme leader of Iran still runs a brutal dictatorship. Oh, and I'm so sorry, you can't take some harsh words of criticism after getting your ass whooped by Israel, and then the United States coming in to deal the death blow to Fordo and Natanz and Isfahan. And by the way, even though the initial bomb damage assessment by the National Intelligence Directorate in the U.S. suggested that there might not be, it may not have been obliterated in Fordo, that it might have only done some damage. If you consider all of the actual kinetic information that we know about what was dropped and where it was dropped, and the blueprints that are known of the place, even though there may be other places within the site that were not known. But if you consider just that, there's really no doubt that at the very least the centrifuges were damaged to the point where they're basically useless, and also the amount of caving in from all the rubble and everything else would make certain tunnels practically hard to access, if not inaccessible. So moving centrifuges out of there would be impossible now, because probably there's no way to get them out of the rubble. without damaging them. So you'd have to clear out all the rubble first, and hopefully the spy satellites would keep an eye on that and see if they're clearing out thousands and thousands of tons of reinforced concrete and mountain rock. They would notice that, hopefully, because it's not a 1 hour procedure. That's going to take a long time to do. And if it is completely destroyed, they're not going to necessarily do all that excavation just to take out damaged goods. What for? To rebuild the same site? I mean, maybe, but highly doubtful. Anyway, the point is, unfortunately, this war is not over. And a big part of the reason for that is that the United States interfered, dropped the bombs, which, again, was very good to do if the regime was going to stay in place, which it did. But the regime stayed in place because they dropped the bombs, is my argument. And why do I say that? Well, because if Trump had stayed out of it, at least for a little while longer, like he could have had that death blow maybe at the end, but it would have been unnecessary. Instead, he could have just maybe, dropped the bomb on the parliament of the Iranian dictatorship after they'd been, driven out of there anyway. Just symbolically to say, America, destroyed the government of Iran or whatever. If that's the kind of thing he wants, we know he likes that kind of thing. But if he had stayed out of it, then Israel could have cleared out a lot more targets. And instead of having, 40% of their missile launchers available now, maybe they would have a 20% or 10% or maybe none of their missile launchers would be available if Israel had been allowed to continue decimating the Iranian dictatorship's IRGC weaponry. But instead, he came in and interfered, for lack of a better word. And sure, he took out 3 key nuclear sites that were key targets if the regime would stay in place. But if the regime would have been changed, then those sites would not necessarily have been targets at all. Because whatever new regime or government would come instead might very well have said, you know what, we don't want nuclear stuff. We got rid of the old regime because they were evil oppressors, and we don't want to live under that kind of terrible rule anymore. So, go ahead and dismantle this stuff and we'll help you, right? So it would have been completely unnecessary to bomb those places. But, Trump wanted to have his military show of force, so he did that. And again, okay, so they left the regime in place, therefore taking out the sites was important. And they most certainly, definitely wrecked those places, even if they're not, quote unquote, completely destroyed or whatever. They're definitely damaged to the point where you got to remember, centrifuges are so sensitive. Like literally, if you bump into them with your body, you could ruin them, right? So like a lot of them, they usually have to be assembled on site, right? In order to not have to be moved. If not assembled, actually built on site in order to not be moved. So, but now the question is, where are the many kilos of enriched uranium that's definitely above 60%? And you got to remember, back in 2022, I think it was, or 2023, IAEA inspectors found trace particles of uranium that have been enriched above 83%. Meaning they probably already have uranium above 90%. Meaning they already have, uranium enriched to the point where they can make a serious nuclear weapon out of it. I've been saying that for years, right? I don't know if they have any nukes or not, but it would be highly unlikely of them not to have any at this point, or to have something very close to it that they can easily fabricate into a nuke. But, having one, yes, is a major threat, because they could go psycho and just try to launch one and destroy Israel, in theory. But in reality, one might get shot down by Israel's air defense. So they'd need like 10, 20, 30, maybe 100, right, to make sure that they can get one through. And we don't know that they do, right? We definitely don't. I don't think they have 100. Maybe they do, but maybe not. But anyway, that is the conundrum right now that Israel's intelligence agencies have to sort through and figure out, along with hopefully the American, intelligence agencies and probably the British as well, and hopefully put an end to this war soon. From what I've seen, it is not over, not even close. Maybe one day I'll be able to tell you more about it, but for now, that's it. Peace.